Hello, I'm Ally, a 29-year-old woman. I grew up in a single-parent home after my dad passed away when I was very young. My mom never remarried and worked tirelessly to feed and clothe me. She never hesitated to share her struggles with me, which made me feel deeply indebted to her, even when she treated me poorly. My mom often complained about the hard work she put in to provide for me, yet she constantly criticized me for my weight. I remember the first time I felt self-hatred. I was 8 years old, and my mom caught me eating a bar of chocolate after dinner. She yelled at me, saying I was getting too fat and ugly for her liking. This only worsened as the years went by. I tried talking to her, but it never helped, only more insults came my way. The irony was that I wasn't even fat or ugly. I was of normal weight for my age and height, and I received a fair amount of attention from boys. I couldn't understand why my mom hated me so much. When I turned 18, I wanted to move out, but I didn't have the funds. So I stayed with my mom while attending college. It was there that I had my first boyfriend. He was charming, handsome, and your typical jock. I fell madly in love with him. We got together in our second year and stayed together until shortly after graduation. I was convinced he was the one for me. Of course, my mom hated that I had a boyfriend and would always praise him while simultaneously insulting me. This didn't help my already fragile self-esteem. My boyfriend and I decided to wait a year before getting married. However, 2 months later, he suddenly broke up with me. I was confused and hurt. When I asked him why, he just looked at me with disgust. In that moment, I sought comfort from my mother, but instead of consoling me, she laughed and said, "Thank God he left. He deserves so much better than you." I was shocked. "What do you mean?" I asked. She replied, "He was madly in love with you, but with a little nudge from me, he saw the light." "Are you saying you made him break up with me? What did you say to him?" "Oh, nothing you don't already know. I just opened his eyes to how ugly you are. Once he saw it, he didn't want to marry you." "What's wrong with you? How could you do this to your daughter?" "Stop being so dramatic, Ally. I know you're sad, but for your own sake, don't indulge in sweets. It'll make you gain more weight." That was my breaking point. I had saved up a decent amount of money from working part-time. That night, while my mom was asleep, I packed my things and moved out. I stayed at a friend's place until I got my own apartment. It took a long time to heal, but eventually, I started putting myself out there more and regained my confidence. Sometimes I felt sad that my mom never made an effort to call or check up on me, but I got over it. Once I felt better, I would check in on her occasionally but kept our contact minimal. Then I met Holt. We bumped into each other at a coffee shop and ended up sitting in the same booth because the place was full. We started talking, and he turned out to be an amazing guy with a great sense of humor. We exchanged numbers, and the rest is history. Holt and I dated for 3 years before deciding to make it official. During those 3 years, I got to know Holt's family, who accepted me with open arms. This was a very healing experience for me. I told Holt about my history with my mom, and needless to say, he wasn't her biggest fan. I was incredibly happy to be marrying Holt. I felt like I was on top of the world. It was amazing to be loved by someone so wonderful. My looks didn't matter, and part of me wanted to shove that in my mother's face. I knew it would be petty, but when your own mother bullies you about your looks from the age of 5 until adulthood, you're bound to feel that way. Holt and I began planning the wedding immediately after we got engaged. I kept my idea of revenge on the back burner because I wasn't sure if it was morally right. About 2 months into the planning, Holt asked me about the guest list. "So, who are you thinking of inviting?" "Well, my close family and friends. I don't think I'll have a lot of people to invite." "All right, I don't mean to be insensitive, but when you say family, are you asking if I'm going to invite my mom?" "Yeah, I know it's a sensitive topic, but I just want some confirmation, you know. I was actually thinking of inviting her." "Oh, really? How come?" "Okay, I know this will sound mean, but I kind of want to rub it in her face. I've become who she always told me I wouldn't be. She used to constantly tell me that no man would ever love me because of my looks, but here I am." "Oh, honey, I don't think that's mean at all. In fact, I fully support it. It's the least mean thing I've ever heard, but it's perfect considering everything that your mother put you through." "Really? So you're okay with it?" "I am, as long as you are. Although I will say that if your mother says anything rude to you, I will interfere." "That's absolutely okay. Thanks for supporting me." "That's exactly what I'm here for, isn't it?" It felt great to have Holt validate my feelings. He knew about the extent of the damage my mom did to my self-esteem, and yet he was more than willing to accommodate me. I felt a new wave of excitement. I couldn't wait to brag to my mom about my marriage. Not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man, but also a man who showed me in every way possible that he loved me more than anything. That was definitely going to embarrass my mom. As we finalized the technicalities of the invitation, like the look, fonts, and paper, I couldn't help but wonder how my mom would react. Would she go red in the face from humiliation? Would she apologize? Would she, for once, be proud of me? I know I seem naive to only think about the best-case scenarios, but I couldn't help it. Even though I barely contacted her anymore, she was still the only parent I had, and I wanted some form of a relationship with her. Don't get you wrong, I would never forgive her that easily. She put me through years of therapy because of her bullying. I would make sure she apologized properly before cautiously building a relationship with her. Whenever I had a negative thought about her reaction, I pushed it away because I didn't know how I would deal with it. When it came time to print the invitations, Holt and I sat together and handwrote the names of our guests. We wanted to do a traditional handwritten invitation. When I was writing my mother's name, Holt was looking over my shoulder. That's when he held my hand to stop me. I looked at him in confusion. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's just. Do you not want me to invite my mom? No, it's not that. That's your mom's full name? Yeah, why? You guys have different last names. Oh yeah, my mom kept her maiden name after she got married. I got my dad's name. That's funny. Why? What's wrong? I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I have an employee with that same exact name. What? That's crazy. Yeah, she plans to retire in another year or two. This is super weird. I mean, your mom's name and maiden name are not very common. Do you think? I don't know which company she works for, but do you maybe have files of your employees on hand or even a staff picture? Oh yeah, of course I do. Holt shot up from the couch and ran into his office. My heart was pounding. What were the chances? I had always believed the world was small, but for it to be this small was crazy. Holt came back with his laptop in hand, and we sat down together to find a picture of the woman with the same name as my mom. Thankfully, the company had just had an event recently and a lot of pictures were taken. Holt and I scrolled through the pictures before I finally saw her. It was my mom, laughing at something someone had said. She was holding a drink, laughing at something someone had said. I stared in shock for a couple of seconds before bursting out in laughter. Holt asked if that was my mom, and I confirmed it. He didn't know much about her beyond why I kept my contact with her minimal. We shared a laugh because it was truly amazing how the universe had aligned to put my mother in her place. Not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man who loved me, but I was also marrying my mom's boss. That was definitely something I wanted to brag about. I hoped for her sake that she would be on her best behavior because she had no idea what she could be risking if she tried to say anything against me. When we finally sent out the invites, we received a ton of responses almost immediately. I tracked them to ensure they reached their destination safely. When I saw that my mom's invitation had been delivered, I anxiously waited for her response. But over a week went by, and I heard nothing. I began to lose hope that my mom would come to my wedding. I tried to tell myself it was no big deal, but she was my only parent, and getting married was the biggest event in anyone's life. Of course, I wanted my mom there, even if she just sat silently. Holt could see that I was down and comforted me. He reminded me that regardless of whether my mom came, it would still be our day, and we would be surrounded by people who loved us. I began to feel better, but I wasn't fully convinced. Then finally, my mom's RSVP came in. She said yes. That was it, just yes. It hurt that she didn't even call to ask about who I was marrying or inquire about the wedding. But at least she would be there. I messaged her, asking if she would like to be part of the rehearsal dinner, and she replied with another simple yes. Having my mom there was a win, a small win, but a win nonetheless. I felt happy. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, I was a nervous wreck. Meeting my mom after 3 years made me anxious. I made sure my dress was perfect, my hair was in place, and my makeup was flawless. I couldn't help but think that I didn't even make that much effort for Holt. My mom walked into the rehearsal dinner and found me immediately. Holt was busy talking to someone else in the hall, so she didn't notice him. She made a beeline for me, My hands got clammy as she approached, but I calmed myself, reminding myself that I had the upper hand. She greeted me with a hug before looking me up and down and laughing. I felt myself shrivel up inside, like the helpless little girl I used to be. "So who's the unlucky guy? I see you still haven't become skinny, so you must have found some ugly hobo." "Mom, that's beyond rude. Oh please, whoever is choosing to marry you while you look like this must be clearly blind and very unlucky." "Actually, I think you're the unlucky one, Quinn." "Holt, what are you doing here? What do you think? Didn't his name look familiar to you at all?" "Well, yeah, but I didn't think." "You didn't think what?" "That your daughter would be capable of marrying someone like me because you think she's too ugly? Or am I enough of a hobo to be able to marry your daughter?" "No, well, I didn't mean it like that. Look, you're on thin ice. It's bad enough that you've insulted me, but if I hear you say one more word against Allie, I swear I will make your life miserable." "Okay, but I must say, Allie, you're an absolute piece of work for purposely going after my boss. What did you think it would do for you? Did you think I would go easier on you?" "I didn't purposely go after your boss. We only found out when we were sending the invite, but I did hope to mend our relationship. I guess that won't be happening. Enjoy the rest of the dinner, and I'll see you tomorrow." Holt and I walked away hand in hand. Once we were out of her sight, we dissolved into laughter. The look of absolute horror on her face when she saw Holt was unforgettable. I had hoped for a much nicer interaction, but seeing her put in her place was actually more satisfying. I was so caught up in my emotions that I didn't even notice Holt walk up to us. But I was glad he had managed to come right in time. The rest of the evening passed without any other incidents. The next day was hectic. However, when it came time for the ceremony, all I could feel was immense pride. Seeing Holt stand at the altar with tears in his eyes as he watched me walk down the aisle made all the hours of getting ready worth it. I happened to scan the crowd and spotted my mom. She noticed me looking at her and pulled a face. The same face she always made whenever she thought I looked ugly or fat. I stumbled for a second, questioning everything. I knew I looked beautiful, but seeing my mom's expression made me feel very insecure. I looked at Holt and all my doubts vanished. He still looked at me like I was the only girl in the room. Other than that, the ceremony went off without a hitch. Holt and I exchanged our vows through tears, and the crowd cheered as we kissed. On our way to the reception hall, I told Holt what had happened earlier. "So something happened during the ceremony," I began. "What happened? Are you okay?" Holt asked, concerned. "Oh yeah, I'm fine now," I assured him. "Good, then tell me what happened." "Well, when I was walking down the aisle and I stumbled a little." "Yeah, I was a little worried. I happened to look into the crowd and saw my mother making the same face she always made to tell me I didn't look good. My God, what the hell is wrong with that woman? How could she do that to her own daughter on her special day? I don't know, but in that moment, all I wanted to do was run away and cry. But then I took one look at you and felt all right. That's right. If your mother does something like that again, just look at me. You're beautiful and nothing your mother says or does will ever change that." Thanks, I needed that. And I was serious when I said I would take action if your mom did something against you again. Now that I know just how much leverage I have over her, you best believe I will make sure she learns her lesson properly, and I'll be okay with whatever you do. The reception started off well. We began with dancing and drinking, and everyone was having a great time. Holt and I greeted all our guests and had conversations with them. I found myself feeling better with each interaction. At some point, I saw my mom walk into the hall, but she ignored us and went straight to the bar. I felt a little bad, but figured being ignored was better than being told I looked ugly again. So I let it go. Holt kept me by his side the entire time, which I appreciated because it was a great distraction. Finally, it was time for the toasts. Holt started with a heartfelt toast to us and our relationship, which made me cry. I followed with my own toast, and I was happy to see that I made him feel the same emotions he made me feel. If there was one thing to mention about the toasts, it was that with every toast made to Holt and me, my mom scoffed. She received a lot of dirty looks, but that didn't stop her. At some point, she stood up and said she had a toast to give us. My heart dropped. I knew my mother, and I knew how evil she could be. I knew this would not end well. Holt held my hand, and when I looked at him, his jaw was clenched. At least we both felt the same anxiety at that moment. My mom began talking about how I was undeserving of Holt. She praised Holt for being a great boss and a wonderful man, then conveniently brought up that he was her boss. When she spoke of me, she kept talking about how ugly I was and how I should be grateful that Holt even spared me a glance. I felt sick. How could she say that? Holt looked like he was going to burst a vein from how hard he was restraining himself. The rest of our guests looked appalled. Finally, when my mother finished her awful speech, she sat down with a satisfied smirk on her face, happy with the reactions she got. Thankfully, the rest of the evening proceeded without anyone mentioning what my mom had said. Holt and I tried our best to put it behind us for the night. Even when we got back home, neither of us spoke about it. There was an air of sadness, but we chose to ignore it because we were happy to be legally and officially together. The next day, Holt left for work. He told me something urgent had come up, but promised to be back by noon, so I didn't mind. True to his word, Holt came back home by noon, and we settled on the couch to watch some of our favorite shows. An hour later, I heard banging on the front door, along with my mom yelling for me to come out and open the door. I was confused and looked at Holt, sensing his urgent business had something to do with my mom. I walked to the door and opened it. "You absolute wretch. What did you say to him, huh?" she yelled. "What do you mean? Don't play dumb. You made him fire me." "Holt fired you." "Yeah, and I'm sure it's because of something you said. You're so stupid you never know what you say." "I'm going to have to stop you there, Quinn," Holt interjected. "I don't think I need to remind you of your speech from yesterday. You praised me and completely dissed your own daughter, who is my wife. How did you possibly think that was okay? I told you I'd make you regret it if you even said a word against her." "Whatever. You can't fire me for that. I'll sue you. You've also been highly negligent with your work. I was going to fire you anyway, but kept you for a few months only because you are Allie's mother. Since you have no respect for her, I see no reason to help you out. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're busy. Goodbye." I couldn't believe it. Holt stood up for me in a way I hadn't even considered. Holt held me in his arms as I cried. I finally felt free. I felt valued and respected, and I knew I never wanted anything less than that from then on. I didn't care to find out what happened to my mom after that, and neither did Holt. The two of us continued to live our lives in blissful ignorance of her whereabouts. I've learned just how important it is to have and enforce your boundaries. Don't let anyone treat you like you're worth nothing because, to someone else, you mean the world.